Hey everybody, this is Erik, and we're going to talk about relaxation today. There is a book, it's an old book, You Must Relax, Edmund Jacobson. And you can tell by the title, it's old school. In fact, it was published originally in 1934. So this would have been, about 4 years after the Great Depression. This was in the heart of the Depression. Then copyrighted one in 1942. We're talking World War II here. So stress. And then another copyright 1957 and then 1962, in fact. So I'm not going to read you the whole book, but I want to read just certain sections that might really inspire you to really get into understanding what he's saying. This was a gentleman, Edmund Jacobson, who is greatly respected. In some ways, was a pioneer. He was studying relaxation as early as 1908. And he was at the laboratory of Harvard University. Then he went to Cornell and then at the University of Chicago until 1936. He worked with, and it shows you how old this is, Bell Laboratories, like think telephone, and Alexander Graham Bell. And you will see pictures of EEG, or not, sorry, I'm so used to EEG, EMG, electric muscle, activity here. And he did experiments where just putting a little tiny needle, sensors, today we use sensors, but this was a needle, such a way where it can measure the tiniest movement. And the idea of just thinking a thought, like, hey, what is your name? To answer the name in one's brain, the muscles would contract. And it's like, wow, how many of us are thinking thoughts where then we have constant tension? We use phrases like we're a bundle of nerves. So I'd like to take this in pieces, really, because I think if someone really reads this and practices this, it could actually be life-changing. So I'm going to read here. It says, this is a tense world, as many of us well know. We talk about tension and we read about it. It is discussed in newspaper articles and magazines and in books. Evidently, there is a growing popular realization of something excessive in our way of living, which can lead to disorder and malady. There is a search for a remedy. Today, doctors tell us to relax. Wow, excessive in our way of living. That's really interesting to me. Am I doing too much? Am I thinking too much? Am I moving too much? I might be moving too little in some ways. I think of the phrase moderation in all things, and I'm aiming towards more moderation in my life. I think many of us aren't getting enough sleep. We're thinking too much. Later in this book, he'll talk about we have an overactive mind. Never really thought about it that way. Like one could overuse a muscle over and over and over and over again, and it's going to really wear that muscle out. It's going to be hard on that muscle. Our muscles need time to relax. We may be thinking too much, and that much thinking is causing a lot of problems. I am a Christian, and so I have a faith tradition, and I heard someone who I really respect say, if we really trusted Christ, we wouldn't have a tense muscle in our body. That I think is really, really true. And I think that's why we really have, or at least I have this tension. It says, this was not always so. When the famous physician who attended President Wilson wrote a book about rest, the word relaxation did not even appear in the index. People did not discuss tension. The characters in movies written in that epoch did not tell each other to relax as they do nowadays, but the word had not yet sunk into popular mores. I know because 10 years previously, I had begun to develop the principles and the scientific study of tension and relaxation as we now know it. So we're talking 1908, that's over 100 years ago. Okay. I felt the burden of responsibility deeply. On the one hand, I must test each advance in the field objectively, avoiding my enthusiasm, which could cloud my judgment. Wow, I love this guy. Talking about good science. He's not wanting his enthusiasm to cloud his objectivity. And how many, well, this is a bold statement, how many people who are doing research are clouded by either monetary gain or some kind of notoriety. I must not disclose in my cold analysis as a scientist, I must not close my eyes to any light which could guide mankind. My investigations were begun in the laboratory of Harvard University in 1908. Then he talks about being at Cornell. It says these results of these investigations afforded practical measures for improving the nervous status of human beings. These practical measures have been tested and been developed further over the years in my associated clinics. My studies led to definite understanding of what tension really is, namely, the effort which is manifested in shortening of muscle fibers. Physiologists know this as muscle tension and have studied it in animals for over a century. I was attempting to begin where they left off in order to turn some of the vast basic knowledge which had been accumulated toward the benefit of man. And here's it. Believing that universal trend toward overactive minds and bodies can result in various ills, I wrote a book in 1929 called Progressive Relaxation. It talks about that it was really written to doctors. Here's a gentleman over 100 years ago, well, close, like 95 years ago, talking about how nervousness, nervous tension, overactive thinking, chronic muscle tension leads to various illnesses. High nervous tension is prevalent in America today. What is today? 1934. Leading to tension disorders of various types, which will be discussed in this volume in an elementary manner. We know what we know about the nervous system in the mind, what we know from investigation by electrical methods can be synthesized in one very important principle. Relaxation is the direct negative of nervous excitement. It is the absence of nerve muscle impulse. More simply said, to be relaxed is the direct physiological opposite of being excited or disturbed. It's kind of like being still in the phrase, and know that I am God. It's not moving. And I think some of the translations I've heard is kind of like stop moving. And I may be still in my physical structure called a body, but inwardly, am I still? Are the fibers of my being tense? And what he'll later talk about is how the thoughts, are today we tend to think thoughts give way to muscle tension. But he's saying that if we can relax our bodies, we're going to relax our minds, that our thoughts will be better just by relaxation. Very interesting idea. Well, how many of us have actually been in a situation where someone calmly says, here, it's going to be okay? Or it gives us, an appropriate massage, a way to hug, comfort, even holding a hand when someone's in a hospital. It seems to calm us down. They're in dialectical behavior therapy. It's called the half smile technique. It's kind of like if you're really distressed, just smile a little bit. It will kind of help your body begin to relax. Is this obvious? I hope so, for I have worked so hard over the years to make it become so. If it is even beginning to become incorporated into the thinking of the medical student, I am very glad. But let him draw the conclusions. Nervous disturbance is at the same time mental disturbance. Thus, neurosis or psychoneurosis are at the same time physiological disturbance, for they are forms of tension disorder. Who had this tension disorder. That is actually really interesting. How many of us have tension headaches, back pains, neck pains, overactive bladder, overactive bowels, TMJ? The list goes on and on and on. And we tend to have an overemphasis on the body where then we go run and get a medication or we go do some physical therapy, which has its place for sure. But we may want to consider, what is the cause of this? What's causing us this tension in our bodies? I remember in my own recovery in mind body issues, someone said, Erik, tension is tension. And, they also said pressure is pressure. It's this idea that I could put pressure on myself. I could be tense and spread that tension around. And I think it's really, really important for me to learn how to relax and to stay. It takes practice. You're going to learn that it's going to take practice. We'll finish with this. I'll read some of these important quotes. Tension is an objective manifestation of what all of us know in ourselves as effort. So if I pick up something, I have to have tension in my hands and arms, wrists, shoulder to pick that up. Sorry for the click there. The same word is used not only for the effort which is in our every act, but also for excess thereof. Thus, in one context, tension may mean reasonable effort, and another excessive effort. Once this matter is clarified, we can judge from the context whether the word tension is to be interpreted as meaning necessary effort or excessive effort. I remember thinking about driving. How hard do we have to grip the wheel to actually steer the car? And it's like, this is suggesting we should see it as two different situations. One is I'm taking reasonable effort to hold on to the wheel. And I practice with this of just letting go of some of the tension, still maintaining control of the vehicle, but I don't need to overgrip it. In the newly added chapters, I have tried to show more clearly how our efforts to achieve the smaller and greater forms of success for which all of us strive can lead to tension disorders when these efforts become greater than our bodies can bear. There's something about that sense that's talking about we're overdoing something. I'm overdoing something. Tension disorders include various common nervous disorders, including states of fear and anxiety, and they're often involved also in conditions known as peptic ulcer, nervous indigestion, spastic colon, high blood pressure, and coronary heart attacks. Wow. Is that interesting or what? So we're going to talk next about heart disease, how they studied soldiers in the Korean War and found that a lot of them that had died from combat, but you take care and have a great day.